Hello and welcome to another episode of From the Plant Floor Up from DYNICS. On today's episode, we've got Jeff Smith, our CTO of DYNICS. He's going to be talking to Matt Luallen, the CyManII Executive Director of Ecosystem. We're going to talk about topics that are important in today's OT world. And with that, Jeff, Matt, take it away.
Chris, thanks. Let's start with what is the Executive Director of Ecosystems, and I probably just slaughtered that, but I have to be close. What is that? What does that guy do?
Yeah, that's a great question. So number one, I'm here representing CyManII, and I've been a part of CyManII now for over 2.5 years, and then recently, as of early December, got appointed this Executive Director of Ecosystem, and in that capacity, I'm trying to get more people aware of what CyManII does, how we're there to help secure manufacturing, whether you're small, medium, or large, but with definitely an intent focus on small to medium, and let them be aware, number one, of what CyManII offers for workforce development and education, to peer research that we're working on through our industrial use cases, as well as be forward-leaning into, all right, well, what are the other pain points that other manufacturers may have that aren't aware of CyManII yet, and how we can help them, either through, again, workforce development, where they can know how to prioritize security, understand where AI may be helpful or may be a hindrance, understand really purely how to spend their dollars wisely in securing their systems, to the more advanced area of, hey, we actually have some really neat ideas and research that we're doing. We'd like to be involved with other key CyManII members to go and develop something new. And so it's a broad swath, but ultimately it's about awareness and securing manufacturing.
That sounds good. DYNICS is we're a managing member of CyManII. We've been there since the inception as well. So the organization has does a lot of great work across multiple sectors, but largely energy based. But in general, the work they do seems to be very applicable to lots of different places and lots of different things. So, so let's talk about what's new and exciting. And I mean, what's firing you up about OT cybersecurity these days? What new and exciting thing is it? Is it zero trust? Is it zones and conduits? Is it what lights a fire under Matt right now?
Yeah, well, we're coming fresh off of, S4, happened to be transitioned over to Tampa, Florida here recently. That's, for anybody not aware, that's an OT cybersecurity conference. Had about 1,200 folks there, securing whether it's energy to manufacturing to, whether it's manufacturing electrons to manufacturing, purified water, or manufacturing a physical, intangible product, food parts, whatever it may be. I think there's a combination of things going on right now they're pretty phenomenal. One is the traditional things we've been talking about for 25 years and securing OT systems. It wasn't OT then, right? It was SCADA or ICS, whatever you want to call it. But the abilities to truly think through how devices talk to each other, how to think through how to communicate with your OEM or your distributor about security controls you really want imparted as a new product that you're purchasing, as well as the education for somebody on your line that's operating it, the ability to use generative intelligence, number one. So I'll kind of on that area of AI just for workforce development it's pretty phenomenal, but there's some risks. So we'll talk about that as well. But you also brought up zero trust. I mean, the understanding of how these things actually talk to each other, like I was just saying there momentarily ago, is now a little bit easier to do than what it was, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, because we can have, the actual OEMs thinking through this process a bit more. And that's another thing that's happened over the past 5 years, the categories of S-bombs and H-bombs and bill of materials. And so ultimately what I've seen occurring, which manufacturers have already been doing for a long time, engineers have already been doing for a long time, is that we're taking their regimen of being very specific of our IT and OT systems and how they're constructed, while at the same time imparting upon the engineers cyber-informed engineering so that they can make good secure by design decisions. And so I think we're coalescing. I think we're at this interesting, maturing stage. There's still a lot of people that have to get on board in direction and traction, but coalescing the values of engineering into being very specific through bills and materials about what we're constructing in the IT and OT electronic space, and then vice versa, equipping the engineers with some questions to ask and some design considerations early on, so that things can be built more secure by design. And those are the things that excite me now, that we actually, I think, are making some incredible progress in those areas.
Yeah, I agree from a perspective of making a lot of progress. I know one of the challenges we have, at least I faced as an end user, was workforce. And when you have a lot of ideas like cyber-informed engineering, and you're bringing, you're trying to bring people up to speed, it's a challenge sometimes, because you've got some guys that are just coming out of school, some guys that are just very open-minded, and then again, you've got, the guys that have been around for 32 years, refuse to retire, and they're just going to do the way they've always done it. So I know that's always been a challenge from our perspective, and I'm not sure we have an answer for how. I mean, I suppose it's attrition, right? We just wait till they age out. It seems like there would be nice if there was a way to move that needle, I think, a little quicker, because there are, like you say, there's a lot of great ideas, a lot of great initiatives, a lot of great work being done. The devil's in the details, though, is how do you get that onto the plant floor, and how do you deal with a workforce that, maybe change isn't their bailiwick.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if I want there to be attrition, though. I'll tell you that, because those are the folks, the men and women that are going to be able to operate in manual mode if we need to do that. I mean, that is very true, right? Yeah, they understand what was constructed, pre a lot of the automation, and have incredible respect, right, for every single one of them that they've gone through that evolution.
Yeah, I mean, tribal knowledge, like you said, you're spot on. Tribal knowledge in those guys is priceless. It's absolutely priceless.
And I think the biggest part is that how can we meet in the middle, right, between these two different scenarios of knowing that, and also feel okay. Again, I'm right there, feeling okay being ignorant about some of the assumptions that we made 5-10 years ago aren't valid today, because the adversary has gotten better, or the way we connect things is different, or the way we go about business is different. And so, and that was a struggle for me personally, for some of the decisions that I made within, some of the environments that I've been in, and then watch those decisions fall by the wayside as far as being the right decision anymore, because of just how something got connected differently, or how some other requirement came in business-wise, let's say to allow for remote ordering, through some other kind of, SaaS system that's coming in, or SAP system that's coming in. So that, I think that needs to be taken into accountability. But we don't really, I think, have the time to wait any longer. I know we've said this for quite some time, around their sense of urgency. But I just got a call thinking about the adversary going after them. Either one, you're going to eventually hit you with ransomware, or two, just stealing your intellectual property and becoming you in some way, and you're going to miss out on your business just because somebody stole your ideas.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that. A couple of things come to mind based on what you just said. But one of the things we always did was, when we started securing our OT systems back in my end user days in 2010, before people knew what OT security was. Malware was really not even a thing to speak of. We made sure, and I don't talk to a lot of people that do this, we made sure that you couldn't compromise any one part of an assembly system and know how we built what we built. You would have to be able to compromise multiple parts of that system, and be able to be smart enough to put all that puzzle piece together to figure out how do we, what tolerances do we push to, how do we test? And that was by design. We specifically broke the systems up that way to make it more difficult. Be from NVH machines, which run their own systems, to the actual assembly system plus gauging systems. And it's funny, because people think so much about technology, they forget that there are some simple answers to some complex problems. It may not be the whole answer, but it's a lot of it, right? It's kind of like I talk about, when you look at some of the things that happen if you put a simple speed sensor on something, and if you don't want the centrifuge to go too fast, then put a $200 electrical circuit in that says if you're going faster than this many RPM, shut down. And people are worried about all the software that's on the network and all the data comms, but we have opportunities to secure our systems like that I think we forget and we overlook because we have so much cool new tech on the line, and we're thinking about how do I protect all the tech. Well, it might be something as a simple answer as speed sensors and opening a contact. They don't have that in the IT space, right? That's not I kind of always say that's physical controls and physical safety and physical means like that. It's kind of like the OT space is cockpit door on an airplane, right? It's a physical something we can do that's very simple, not very complicated, but goes a long ways towards stopping bad things from happening if somebody is compromised.
Yeah, so to echo your point, right, instrumenting security around it. And that's an incredible advantage that we have in the OT space that IT doesn't have. And the engineers that know how to do it. So that leads into, one of the research elements that we've been doing at CyManII, and that is, how can we not only identify ways for you to conserve energy and make things energy efficient from the standpoint of your production line, but at the same time, use instrumentation security around the voltage and the currents that's flowing, and specifically the current that's flowing on that line to identify potential predictive maintenance concerns. And I'm going to say predictable maintenance isn't just the fact that your tooling is failing or something needs to be lubricated or the fact that there's some kind of other environmental indicator. It may also be associated with cyber, but you can use that data for all purposes, and so that's one of our use cases we're going through now is we're going through and we're looking at a CNC machine just as an example, and we've instrumented it with security and the standpoint of how we look at how it's operating and the code that's operating it and the tooling that's on it. Can you detect early failures? Can you detect maliciousness? And what are other ways, like you gave the example of the centrifuge, what are other ways you can instrument and think about what you already have as tags and points in your environment or data that's there and use it in more creative fashions? And I know engineers are great doing that, but how can we equip everybody on the table to say, hey, oh, wow, we could actually use this data a little differently from a security perspective as well?
Yeah, it's absolutely. I mean, I think of things like furnace temperatures, and there's always safeties like that, but I don't think many people think of it in terms of like you said, wrapping instrumentation around cybersecurity. I when I speak in front of larger crews, one of my favorite questions is how many people in the room has reviewed their standard drawing sets with cybersecurity in mind? Mm-hmm. And it's almost never. Every now and then somebody will raise their hand that they've done it. I said, but you've got a wealth of capability right there. So if you don't make it a part of how you think about building equipment, if it's not something you do from the start, it's never going to be. You're never going to be able to bolt that on within the confines of timing and cost. I mean, when we would build an assembly system and it was supposed to be done 40 weeks, right? And usually everything would be. It's kind of the old controls mechanical engineering joke, right? You have 12 weeks to retrofit a system and controls get 6 weeks, mechanical gets 6 weeks, and mechanical takes 9 weeks, and they want to know why controls isn't done in 3 weeks. When you have 40 weeks to build a line, you don't have the luxury and budget or time to make the changes or do things. So, I mean, it has to be a part of what you're doing going into it. You have to go into it with a mindset of cybersecurity. And it's got to be a part of your standard process so that it's got to be reactionary. You don't even have to think about it. We know we're doing this. We know we need to look at this. Okay, we have a new piece of equipment. We've never bought this before, right? Number one, does it work? Number two, does it efficiently produce parts? Number three, can we secure it? And how secure is it, right? That has to be ingrained into the process. And if it's not, and we continue the bolt-on mentality, with legacy stuff, I get it. There's not much you can do with a 20-year-old Akuma CNC. It is what it is. Yeah. You can put some stuff in between it and your enterprise, but by itself, you're not making a lot of changes, right? There might be a network card available for it that's, it's on eBay for $10,000 and it's 10 megabit half duplex. And there's 4 of them left in the world. So if you choose to go that route, that might be a career limiting decision.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, you still have to secure it, right? So.
Right. I mean, you know what? I mean, I've done those assessments before where we find out, how much things do you actually buy on eBay just to keep things running? And sometimes, leadership is a little shocked how often that really happens, right? To your point. Yeah.
I think Chris was with us. I don't remember if he was. Chris Gibbs, our CRO. We had a customer. We were talking about plant floor hardened PCs. And I was absolutely flabbergasted to learn that they buy these little Dell brick PCs off of eBay that are reconditioned. They put 20 or 30 of them in a closet. And anytime they have a PC on the plant floor there's a problem with, they grab one, run it out there and stick it in play. And I'm just thinking to myself, well, what's the state of the endpoint protection when you guys throw it out there? Is this Windows? What version of Windows is on it? Because I guarantee you, if the equipment's down, they're not thinking about any of that. They're just plugging it in and hoping it works. So yeah, that was kind of shocking to hear. Oh, they're like $300. I'm like, well, yeah. Until something really bad happens, it's going to be a lot more than $300. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's one thing always to try to think through those break fix scenarios that have occurred, right? So you can just go and recollect, wow, we need to go back and adjust that again. Or was that a good idea? Or we need to go and change our line. So to your point.
Yeah. And so yeah, exactly right. We could have a whole conversation about, you were talking about what seemed like a good idea or how the business decisions driving something change. What's been frustrating to me in the past is the decisions you make from a cybersecurity perspective are still the right decisions, but the business around that machine, equipment, or system have changed. So there's no wherewithal to implement the right decisions, and you have to come up with an acceptable subset. And I hate that mission. But having said that, let's jump topics. So we were both at S4 here not too long ago. One of the interesting things I thought was in Dale Peterson's keynote that I think he was doing his very best, because I think some of his sponsors obviously do a lot with monitoring and detection, and maybe not so much with what happens when I have a problem. I think he was doing a really good job, very PC in the way he presented that, and that, yeah, it's great that you can detect the problems on your network, but what's the remediation? What are you doing to recover the system, or what are you doing to prevent it in the first place, right? I mean, with DYNICS, we're very, and I talked about it in some stuff I was talking to some folks about earlier today. It's we're of the prevent everything except that which we know to explicitly be good mindset. So we want to keep most of the badness off the network if at all possible. But let's assume that no system is 100% secure, right? How important is the recovery process or the ability to remediate it? And I think, and I don't know if you picked up that from his keynote or not, but I think he was kind of in the Dale Peterson way, politely spanking some of these companies that do a lot of detection and put all of their coins in the detection pile, or all their eggs in the detection basket, is given as expensive as eggs are. That was my takeaway. I don't know if you took that away from it or something else.
Well, I think my key takeaway, and I agree with yours as well, but one that I had from that was misaligned risk analysis, right? And so you spend, again, that's the example that you were giving, but what are other areas where you've prioritized something, but it's actually missing what the real pain point is? You're not actually addressing the problem. And, and that's the whack-a-mole behavior, right? That's the effort of I'm trying to solve problems, the break fix scenarios, versus being able to think about, how do I get ahead of this? And, that's cybersecurity is in that realm, because it's all about something you really don't, a lot of people don't think about until it happens, or at least you don't think about the value of the control that you're putting in place until it happens. And that's actually, one of the things we're also trying to do at CyManII is by doing analysis on threat behaviors and techniques of adversaries, as well as common pain points of manufacturing environments, including business alignment. How should you prioritize what kind of controls you should put in place to give the greatest value for your dollar and time, right? Because you have both. We can't just say dollar, because we don't have unlimited time either. We only have so much time we can have in a day. So prioritization, and that's been, we're talking about, some key golden elements in cybersecurity. That's been one for a long time. It's so different than healthcare. Where do you prioritize? If I knew that I walked one more minute a day and it's going to give me one more year of life, okay, let's do that. Versus something else. What are the things you prioritize? So, what's your cyber hygiene in this case? That's going to help you the most.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's valid. Yeah, because part of the conversation was, and along with what you were saying, he was, when you talk about where are you spending your time and what are you looking at, I think he was downplaying. Everybody has this idea that asset detection is critical, and people spend a ton of time on asset detection and knowing what's on their network. But honestly, if you look at something like the 62443 zones and conduits idea, if you have a zone of your system and it's PLCs and HMIs, different things, it from a purely cybersecurity perspective, who cares? By and large, I want to protect what's in that zone. I want to keep the bad things out, keep the good things in. And if I have 3 PLCs and 4 servos, that's no different than 2 PLCs and 10 servos. The steps are not going to change. I'm still going to need to do the same things from a cybersecurity perspective. So knowing the assets specifically like that is not bad. And I mean, firmware additions, if you can pull the firmware out and you have a problem with things like that, there's a ton of benefits that go to it. But assets certainly shouldn't be the focus of cybersecurity because it's just one component of it. And to Dale's point, is that the most important piece? If you have $10 to spend and asset detection is going to cost you $8 and you can do the other stuff, whatever you have left is the $2 to do other stuff, should you put $8 in asset detection, or should you do something else? I thought that was a really good point. It was food for thought for, I think, a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is a mixture of controls, right? Because you have the people part of the equation too. I mean, there's been a lot of environments compromised just by, as painful as it is, and why we have all these phishing tests happening, which I'm not going to say that I'm an advocate of doing phishing tests, because it may lead to other outcomes, but it does show that people are part of the challenge as well, right? Literally how you do an update or how you make changes. And so if you're, and I'm going to call assets, I mean, people are assets, absolutely, but you have to educate and secure and segment everything. And again, is how do you prioritize across that? We started off zero trust, as an example. That's hard, getting to zero trust. I don't necessarily want to be in the whole zero trust category for people. I don't know if that's a good place to be.
Yeah.
But go
ahead. I'm sorry.
But I was just going to say, again, it goes back to where's the best bang for your dollar. And in this case, for a lot of your small to mediums, it's going to be make sure you have an educated managed security provider, right, that truly understands your environment, right, what you have as far as systems, can understand how to relay to you risk. If you get an MSP in and they don't ask any questions about what you have or what matters to you the most for your business, as well as for your systems, or the things you would have to go buy on eBay if something happened, then they probably aren't really aware of the risks in your environment. You may need to go seek somebody else.
Yep, absolutely. I agree completely. Well, we're coming to the close. I did want to relate a story that I find funny, and it goes along with what you said about, whether or not the whole phishing thing works. We were at a customer site deploying software-defined solution with the ICS Defender, and we were all sitting in the conference room in the corporate offices, and we were kind of listening to the controls guys and my guys out of the plant on the plant radios. And of course, the plant manager he was in with us. He had a radio on. Well, the corporate director of cybersecurity was in, and he thought that would be a good day to drop some USB keys around the plant that had a phone home set up on them. And what was funny was maybe the day to do that wasn't when we were there doing a bunch of cybersecurity stuff and everybody in the plant knew it, because we got to listen to an entire conversation of people across the radio. Hey, I just found a USB key. Should I see what's on it? Then you hear somebody else. No, there's a bunch of cyber people across the road. There's a bunch of bigwigs over there. This is a plant. Don't look at it. It was priceless to hear that whole conversation going across the road about these USB keys. And absolutely nobody was willing to touch one because they knew that the corporate guys were across the road. So I thought maybe the day you do that's not the day you're bringing a team of people in to put cybersecurity on the plant floor. So I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just one of those funny things that you look back at and you chuckle. So
Yeah.
well, Matthew, Matt, I appreciate your time today. It's always great talking, and enjoyed the time we had to talk at at S4. Never enough time. And I appreciate your participation today, and hopefully we can talk again soon about other stuff.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. And thank you for your time, and everybody who's listening. Again, do feel free to reach out to CyManII. We're all accessible, and we're here to help you secure your plant floor.